Welcome back, and in today's video we are going to cover, or we are going to learn, the concept of hybrid identities. Well, this is the last chapter in this module that we started. I think 4 videos in this module, which is describe the basic services and identity types of Azure AD. We covered Active Directory description. We covered Azure AD identities type. We covered the types of external identities. And now it's time to understand the concept of hybrid identities. Okay. All right, well, if you are following all the videos that I'm creating and working upon, you must be aware of it. But for the sake of SC-900, or the series that we are working upon, this is the next chapter, next concept that we need to understand. So as the name says, hybrid identities, that means more than one is involved, right? That's what the hybrid is. Okay, so identities that takes care, or that we create in the cloud and it remains in the cloud, are the cloud only identities. But we have seen most of the organization or are already having their own on-premises infrastructure, and they are managing everything with the help of Windows Active Directory. Now this is the high time where everybody is trying to move to the cloud. Most of them, if not everybody. I have seen that that movement because it's been a while. I'm working on the cloud, more than 6 years, I guess. And earlier it was like, why cloud? People used to ask, like, why I need to go to the cloud? But now the question has totally changed. It's like, when are we going to the cloud, or rather, how are we going to the cloud? Anyways, that's a different topic altogether. The whole point is, in this fundamental security and compliance, we need to understand the hybrid identities. And in order to understand why the identity is hybrid, we need to understand the origin, which is on-premises Windows Active Directory. Okay, so if you are creating your identities in the cloud and managing in the cloud, it's cloud only identities. But if your identities are coming from on-premises that you already have, or you're moving to the cloud, or maybe you are going with the hybrid environment, like you are keeping your on-premises, you're moving some part of your infrastructure to the cloud, but you got to manage the identities. So what you are going to do, nobody wants the two identities, one for the on-premises, one for the cloud. What we want the same identities that we can use everywhere. It doesn't matter whether we are accessing cloud application, doesn't matter whether application we are accessing on-premises application. We want to use the same ID and password. And that's what the hybrid identities come into the picture. Means identity which is compatible, or which you can use for the cloud resources, for the on-premises resources, are the hybrid identities. So let's try to understand various methods by which we can achieve the hybrid identities, and how the authentication works. Okay, so let me try to share my screen and take you through the diagram that help us to picturize it better. Then let's. All right, so let's suppose we have cloud here. Okay, this is cloud, or in our case, it's Azure cloud. And we have AD. Let me specify Azure AD here for the IAM purposes, managing our resources. Okay. Now in the cloud, we would have cloud apps, of course, right? It could be your apps, or the SaaS applications that you have bought for your team infrastructure. Now, if everything is in the cloud, what you're doing, you're creating your users here, right? You remember we talked about member users, user type member in the previous video, where your users are residing in the cloud Active Directory. Nothing is involved. Now, but let's suppose we do not have cloud as of now. We have this. This is our on-premises. This is our on-prem, okay? So in on-prem, we are managing everything through, let me say, Windows Active Directory. Our users, groups, passwords, right? Now we realized we need to go to the cloud, or rather not completely. We are creating one branch in the cloud, okay? So there is this VPN connection, let's suppose, just like we are hooking up any other branch. This is the cloud branch. Now we have Azure Active Directory here. We have Windows Active Directory here. Azure Active, we need to access these cloud apps or your applications that you have in the cloud through the same ID and password that we talked about, right? But in order to do that, Azure AD should have that information, okay? Or when you are accessing this cloud apps, somehow your password is validated from the Windows Active Directory, or it is like it's going there. If user and password is in the cloud already, it can be verified. That's the one way. Another way, you are going there, but Azure AD doesn't have the password. You'll go validate the password here on the Windows Active Directory and then can access the application. There is another way where entire authentication process sent to the trusted authentication system like Adfs. So I'm pretty sure what I'm trying to do here, you guessed it, what I'm doing. So let me make it clear. When we are sending username and password to the Azure AD, synchronizing to the Azure AD, user name and password sync, then Azure AD can easily authenticate your request because it also has the username and password, though it is hashed, but it is there. So this kind of authentication is called password hash. Okay. Now, in the second scenario where we are hesitant to send the password to the cloud, so what we did, we created a different way, or we installed few agents on the on-premises server, which has only the outbound call. It can only make the outbound call. And in that outbound call, it goes and takes the password and validates and send it back. And this kind of authentication is pass-through authentication. Okay, you don't need any infrastructure or bigger infrastructure to establish pass-through. You only need agents, which are lightweight and install on any server. It's not like you need a separate server or DMZ. You can install anywhere, where because it only makes the outbound call, right? Now, password hash is a type of managed authentication. So is pass-through. Okay. Now, the third one is ADFS. You have heard it for sure. It is federated authentication. It is federated authentication, which means Azure AD hands off authentication process to this or separate trusted authentication system. But for this, you need to have a separate infrastructure, which is of course costly. So you need to do the trades off what you want. There are a few things which can only be done through Adfs. So if you belong to one of those scenarios, then you don't have any choice. Okay, so these are the three authentication types comes in case of the hybrid identities. So in this video, we understood what is hybrid identities, why this come into the picture, and how can we establish it, right? So what is hybrid identities? It is very simple. Let me summarize at the end. Whenever your on-premises users want to use the same username and password for the cloud applications as well, and you do have a cloud footprint as well, that's how the hybrid identities come into the picture. Okay, so organizations may use hybrid identity model or the cloud only identity model. In the hybrid model, identities are created in Windows Active Directory and then synchronized to Azure Active Directory. In the cloud only model, identities are created and wholly managed in the Azure AD. Okay, so with hybrid model, users accessing both on-premises and cloud apps with the same ID and password. However, there are multiple ways you can establish it that we talked about: pass-through, PTA, ADFS, and that's all about it. I hope this helped you, and thank you for watching. Let's meet in another video. If you have any questions, please put the comments. Thank you.